Nächste! Feuer! Nächste!
Welcome back to Lessons from the Front and to an episode where we interview a gamer who has a huge amount of knowledge about Panzers. Let's go and meet Tom. Hi Tom, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm doing really well, thank you. And it's really great to have you on Lessons from the Front.
It's a pleasure to be here, and it's a pleasure to talk about tanks.
Right, so before we talk about your Panzers, perhaps just tell the viewers how you got into bolt action.
So I've been a war gamer for the last over 25 years, but I've also enjoyed history in so I combine the two. Bolt action is a great way to get into historic gaming, taking small-scale skirmishes from all throughout the World War II era, and then obviously bringing them to life on the tabletop. So that's what I enjoyed. I started in version 1 with British Airborne, and it's expanded from there. But I've really enjoyed getting into the history of German armoured warfare.
All right. You have built, and this is why we have you on the channel tonight, you've built from Panzer I all the way to the King Tiger II, right?
Yeah, and a few of other different variants. So some of the assault gun variants, specialist things like the Panzer IV Verbal Wind, which is their anti-aircraft variant, where they remove the tank turret and replace it with an anti-aircraft turret. So yeah, 1 to 7, with a few others mixed in.
Yeah. May I ask why the German army and why Panzers?
I really like the Tiger. I also like the way that the German armour works. So the German armour is very task orientated, very similar to the British Churchills and things like that. So I really liked German armour, and it was something where I like the fact that everything is designed to do a job, although maybe not in the best way, which is something I'll allude to later with the Wunderwaffen program that was part of the German manufacturing process. But yeah, it was that everything that the Germans built, they built each tank for a specific reason.
Right. Okay. Well, let's get started then. Let's look at your babies.
So starting from the Panzer I. So what I'll do is I'll group the Panzers into their production groups, because different tanks were produced in different groups for specific reasons. So starting with Panzer I and II. Panzer I and II were actually production test tanks. They weren't designed to actually be put into service. The idea was that they wanted to use them as a way of testing production, that they could produce a tank in large scale with the tooling and things like that. So obviously, leading up to the Second World War, the German arms industry was effectively not allowed. Germans were not allowed to produce tanks. They weren't allowed to produce ships over a certain tonnage. They were only allowed to have a certain amount of infantry. And so what happened was the Panzer I and II were actually designed as tractors. So the Panzer I being the Kleiner tractor, Panzer II being the Gross tractor, large and small. And it was just purely an exercise. And they were designed as a teaching tool. So they were designed to test out theories with a unit that operated like a tank, but wasn't a tank. At the start of the war, when the Germans actually unveiled them as tanks, they were designed that they could be very quickly modified with a turret, but they weren't designed actually to go into conflict. It was actually the Panzer III and IV that were designed to take over, and that was supposed to be the main fighting vehicles, but they weren't in production when Hitler declared war against Poland and Czechoslovakia. So what happened was the Panzer Is and IIs, they were brought in as a stopgap measure till the Panzer IIIs and IVs were available in significant numbers.
Right.
So then later on in the war, they were adapted into other vehicles. So the Panzer II chassis was used to create things like the Marder assault gun range. And the Panzer I was relegated to more domestic use, so policing type roles, support, things like that. It wasn't really used as a frontline vehicle. So the Panzer II that you'll see that's mine, I do have a Panzer II that's not painted. The Panzer II you see is a Panzer IIL or Lux, which is actually a late war tank and is not, so it is a Panzer II, but it's not a Panzer II in the true sense. It was derived from the Panzer II, but it wasn't following the pure Panzer II concept.
Right. Okay, so you got the Panzer I, and then you have the Lux, but the Panzer I and Panzer II were actually they were designed together, and then you say the 3 and 4 were designed together that came after the Panzer I and II?
So the Panzer III was designed to anywhere where there was a breakthrough exposed on the enemy line.
Right.
Panzer IIIs would race through, they would get behind the enemy, they would start to take out enemy support units, or they would hunt down other enemy tanks and they would basically engage them. So it was designed for speed. The Panzer III, the early models, had the 5cm anti-tank gun,
right,
which in bolt action terms is a medium anti-tank gun. And they were designed to race out ahead in groups and work on exposing any breakthroughs and stopping that gap from being plugged, basically stop any support getting through, stop enemy armoured units filling that gap. The Panzer IV was designed as a support and breakthrough tank. It started off with a 7.5cm howitzer. It wasn't actually an anti-tank gun that was fitted. So the Panzer IV that I have is a later version where they put the 7.5cm anti-tank gun on, which is changed its role. So basically they couldn't put anything bigger than a 5cm anti-tank gun on the Panzer III. The turret couldn't handle it. The Panzer IV, the turret could handle it. So later on in the war, when enemy armour got thicker, they swapped the roles and the Panzer III became a support tank, Panzer IV became a breakout tank, and it was designed to hunt down enemy armour. The Panzer III and IV, that reached a limit, a capacity of upgunning and up-armouring. The hulls couldn't take any more. They reached a top limit.
Right.
So what happened was that they then, obviously, to counteract heavily armoured units like the Matilda II, the Shah B, when they started encountering T-34 in the Soviet Union, they wanted something that could handle it. Now, German gun emplacements, the anti-aircraft guns, the 8.8cm, was a very powerful high-velocity gun. It was designed to shoot up to a range of 30,000 feet, which was designed to hit aircraft.
Right.
So what they did was they transferred that to a tank chassis. Now that is where we got the Panzer VI, which was Tiger. Now that is a breakthrough tank. It is very heavily armoured, 100 centimetres of armour on the front, nearly as much on the side and rear. It's carrying that really powerful 8.8cm gun, which basically, during the war, there wasn't really anything that could stop that gun. The only things really were German tanks, and that's part of German tank doctrine as well, was that German tanks were designed to carry a gun that could tackle its own armour. It was basically designed to fight anything in its own weight class. Now, it was a breakthrough tank. It wasn't a fast tank. It was designed to work with infantry. It was designed to move alongside the infantry, take out enemy emplacements. It removed the need for the stew because it could take on enemy bunkers, things like that. So it was designed to do that job. But they needed a breakout tank. They needed something that was doing that early war Panzer III job of racing ahead, getting behind, disrupting enemy lines, and that's where the Panther came in.
Right.
It had 7.5 centimetre high velocity gun, similar caliber, so similar barrel diameter to the Panzer IV, but a longer barrel. It gave that propeller charge more time to power up, get the round moving, increase its velocity, and hit harder. So it was a very powerful gun. The frontal armour was sloped like T-34, so it was able to shrug off damage to the front. It didn't want to get enemy round to the sides and rear, but that's why it had a good engine in it. It was fast. The problem was that when they moved into the Soviet Union, they hadn't really got rid of all the bugs and kinks in Tiger and Panther.
Right.
And so what happened was they were underprepared to the extent that they knew that they were going to lose gearboxes fighting in the Soviet Union because the crews weren't used to being as gentle as they needed to be. So they actually sent out additional gearboxes so that in major field workshops, they could change out the gearboxes on Panthers. So during the Soviet Union, they encountered the T-34s and the KV-1s. Now, Tiger could take on a KV-1, just about. But Hitler had a fascination with everything had to be bigger. Each year, he wanted a bigger tank with a bigger gun, more armour, more powerful. Now, this is where we evolve into King Tiger. King Tiger was meant to be a replacement for Tiger. It was going to be more armour, a bigger gun. The downside was they forgot about the engine and gearbox. They took the engine and gearbox out of a Panther, put it into a King Tiger that is another 20 tons heavier. It's basically like 160% of the weight of a Panther in with a gearbox and engine that were only just coped on a Panther. And so King Tiger struggled like crazy to actually manage the load. Very few King Tigers were actually lost to enemy fire. Most were lost to engine malfunctions. They basically, what would happen was either they couldn't maneuver through terrain because most bridges couldn't handle a tank of that weight. King Tiger came in at 65 tons nearly. It was a big, heavy tank. The Yad Tiger, the tank hunter version, was 71 tons. It was the heaviest tank during the Second World War. King Tiger and the Yad Tiger were just so big, so heavy that they were their own downfall. Basically, there's nothing really that could take them on a head-on-head fight. A 17-pounder might dent it, something like a Sherman Firefly, but a King Tiger, a HE round from that gun just simply had to look at a Sherman and it burst into flames. The Yad Tiger, that carried a 12.8 centimetre anti-tank gun. We're talking naval gun size now, stuff that's mounted on ships. Royal Navy destroyers and lighter ships. I mean, modern navies now carry a 5.5 inch gun, which is equivalent to 25.5 centimeters.
Right.
So it's a naval gun caliber. It's a big, big gun. The thing was, it needed a lot of support, and so it was. So that was the downfall of them. The evolution, if they'd have stopped at 3 and 4 and just kept with that upgunning scheme, they would have done fairly well. And had they slowed their sort of progress of war, it would have also tied in nicely. So hopefully that gives you an evolution of Panzers 1 to 7, and gives you a bit of insight into how they worked in their categories and groups.
All right, Tom, thank you so much. That was really interesting.
It was a pleasure. Always great to talk about tanks, and hopefully I've provided you with lots of information and maybe do some more videos talking about specific tanks or their groupings in a bit more detail another time.
Great. I'm sure the viewers would really appreciate that. So guys, until next time then, happy gaming.